The galaxy was silent. Stars shone like scattered diamonds in the endless dark. But in that calm, fear ruled. For millions of worlds, the overlords were the masters of everything. No planet could rise without their approval. No fleet could sail through space without their knowledge. Their power was absolute, and their reach was unstoppable. On the throne world of Zorath Prime, the Overlord Emperor sat, his eyes cold and calculating. Entire fleets bowed to him. Millions of soldiers waited for his command. He had conquered hundreds of star systems, enslaved countless civilizations, and destroyed anyone who dared resist. "No one can stop us," he whispered to himself. "The galaxy belongs to the overlords." In the dark corners of the galaxy, people trembled at the mention of their name. Rumors spread of planets vaporized in moments, cities crushed under fleets of warships, and whole species wiped from existence. The overlords did not negotiate. They did not forgive. Resistance was meaningless. To them, the galaxy was a game, and everyone else was a piece to move or destroy. But in the quietest corner of the Milky Way, a small blue planet spun slowly in the shadow of a dying star. Humans lived there, mostly unaware of the empire that ruled the stars. They farmed, traded, and dreamed quietly, thinking their lives small and insignificant. The overlords had never noticed them. Humans were weak, fragile, and few in number. Compared to the overlords, they were like sparks trying to challenge the sun. Yet, there was something strange about humans. They were small, yes, and fragile, but they were stubborn. They could survive harsh worlds, harsh climates, and harsh enemies. They could fight when everything told them to run. And somehow, somewhere deep in their hearts, they believed they could make a difference, even against beings that had destroyed entire civilizations. One day, a scout fleet from the overlords passed near Earth. Its massive warships glowed like moving stars. Humans on the ground looked up and gasped, but most did not understand what they were seeing. Only a few scientists and dreamers sensed the danger, and yet, they also sensed a strange potential. The overlords, for the first time in history, noticed humans. They laughed when their sensors detected tiny ships, barely able to reach orbit. "Weaklings," the Emperor said with a cruel smile. "They cannot even fight a single patrol ship." But even as he laughed, a small thought crossed his mind. Why do they survive in worlds others cannot? Why do they fight when survival seems impossible? Meanwhile, on Earth, humans were preparing unknowingly for a change. Scientists monitored the skies, military leaders trained fleets, and ordinary people dreamed of adventure. No one knew it yet, but the galaxy was about to notice them. A single human fleet, tiny and fragile, began a journey that would shake the overlord's confidence. The first encounter was simple. A human scout ship slipped through the edges of the overlord patrol. It was small, fast, and almost invisible. The overlords did not care. They sent a warning signal, but humans ignored it. With clever maneuvers, the ship passed deep into enemy territory, leaving the massive overlord fleet unaware of what had just happened. When the Emperor learned of it, he was furious. "How dare they enter our space?" he shouted. "Crush them. Destroy them all. Show no mercy." His generals obeyed, sending hundreds of ships to hunt the intruder. Yet the humans continued to evade, using tricks and intelligence the overlords had never expected. One ship. One species. Yet they moved like ghosts, striking and vanishing before the overlords could react. This small act shocked the galaxy. For the first time, whispers spread among the enslaved species. Maybe not everything is lost. Maybe someone can fight back. The overlords did not notice these whispers yet. They were too proud, too arrogant. But slowly, doubt began to creep into their minds, hidden beneath layers of power and pride. Back on Earth, humans celebrated small victories, unaware that they were writing the first chapter of an epic story. The galaxy had been silent for millions of years. The overlords had ruled with iron fists. No one dared to dream of freedom. But the humans, with nothing but courage, curiosity, and stubbornness, had begun to change the rules. The night sky on Earth seemed ordinary, but the stars told a different story. Somewhere in the dark void of space, an empire watched, and for the first time, it felt a shadow of fear. The humans were small, but they were not ordinary. They were something new, something unpredictable. And so, the stage was set. The overlords ruled the galaxy, confident and cruel. Humans were just beginning to notice them, small sparks in the endless darkness. But even a spark can start a fire. And soon, that fire would burn across the stars. The humans had survived their first encounter with the overlords. Against all odds, their tiny scout ship had slipped through a patrol of massive warships, unseen and unharmed. Back on Earth, the crew celebrated quietly, unaware of the storm they had just stirred in the galaxy. The overlords had noticed them, and not as a curiosity, but as a threat. In the heart of the Overlord Empire, the Emperor's voice thundered across the command room. They have entered our space. They mock us. Find them. Destroy them. His generals bowed, but some exchanged uneasy glances. None had seen such audacity from a species so small, so weak. Most would have surrendered at the first warning. Humans did not. Meanwhile, the human fleet moved cautiously. They were small in number, lightly armed, but clever and fast. Their ships darted through asteroid fields, used gravity to hide from sensors, and coordinated silently. Each move was precise, each decision critical. One mistake could mean annihilation, but humans thrived in impossible situations. The first Overlord scouts finally spotted them. Massive ships, glinting with deadly weapons, cut through space toward the humans. The humans could have fled, but they did something no one expected. Instead of running, they fought with strategy and cunning. Using tiny but fast attack ships, humans struck the Overlord vessels' weak points. They fired only when the enemy shields were down, then disappeared into asteroid belts. The Overlords were shocked. No other species had ever dared fight like this. Most would have panicked. Most would have surrendered. But humans adapted. They learned from each encounter, improved with each strike, and never showed fear. For the first time, the Overlord Emperor felt irritation mixed with curiosity. How can they fight like this? He muttered. They should be dead by now. They are supposed to be weak, ordinary, nothing. Yet the humans survived. They outsmarted patrols, avoided traps, and even managed to steal supplies from the Overlord outposts. As humans returned to Earth, they carried with them evidence of Overlord weakness, tiny, almost invisible flaws in their technology, patterns in their patrols, and moments of hesitation in their troops. It was small, but enough to prove that the Overlords were not invincible. On the other side, the Overlord generals were furious. "These humans are pests," one shouted. "Kill them all." Another added, "They are clever, but they are small. They cannot win." The Emperor, however, paused. He had conquered entire galaxies, yet he could not ignore the humans. Their courage, their unpredictability, and their resilience were like nothing he had faced before. Humans did not understand how much attention they had drawn. They thought they were surviving, exploring, and learning. They thought they were small sparks in the dark. But in reality, those sparks were starting to glow. Across the galaxy, enslaved planets whispered hope. Could it be possible that a small, fragile species, humans, could challenge the mightiest empire in history? Back on Earth, a young commander watched the skies. She had trained for this moment but never imagined facing an enemy like the Overlords. Her hands shook slightly, not from fear, but from excitement. Every human crew member knew the risks. Every move could lead to death. But their courage was stronger than their fear. The humans had learned one critical truth: the Overlords were not unbeatable. They had weaknesses, blind spots, and arrogance that could be exploited. It was not brute force that would win, but intelligence, teamwork, and bravery. One night, as the human fleet rested in orbit, the commander looked at the stars. "They think we are nothing," she whispered. "They think we are weak. But we will show them they are wrong." And for the first time, humans began to see themselves not just as survivors, but as challengers. In the Overlord Empire, a council of generals debated. Some urged immediate annihilation. Others hesitated, warning the Emperor that humans were unlike anything they had faced. "They fight with their minds, not just their weapons," one said. "They adapt. They survive." The Emperor's eyes narrowed. He had never tolerated rebellion. He had never failed. Yet he felt a growing tension, a new kind of threat he had never encountered before. The first contact had ended, but the real war was only beginning. Humans had survived the first encounter, but now the Overlords would come for them in force. Yet the humans were ready. Not because they were strong, but because they were clever, brave, and unpredictable. And somewhere in the silent void of space, the galaxy watched. It had seen the overlords dominate for thousands of years, crushing civilizations and enslaving planets. But now, tiny humans had entered the stage, and everything was about to change. The humans had survived their first contact with the overlords. Against all odds, they had escaped the galaxy's most powerful empire. But survival was only the beginning. Now, humans had to show they were more than small, fragile creatures. They had to prove they could fight, adapt, and endure. On Earth, human leaders gathered in secret councils. They studied the data from their encounters, maps of overlord patrols, and weaknesses they had discovered in the enemy's technology. Every human understood one truth: the overlords were powerful, but arrogance made them careless. Every empire had a blind spot. Humans were small, yes, but their minds were sharp. Their creativity, courage, and stubbornness could be sharper than any weapon. Commander Lyra, the young leader of the first human fleet, studied a holographic map of an overlord supply route. "They are strong," she said, her voice calm but firm. "They have numbers, firepower, and fear. But they do not see everything. They do not expect cleverness. They do not expect humans." Her crew nodded. Each human knew the risks. They were outnumbered, outgunned, outmatched in every way. Yet, humans had one advantage no one had predicted: their ability to adapt. Their first mission in this new phase was simple but daring. A small convoy of overlord supplies was traveling between two star systems. Destroying it would not end the overlord empire, but it would prove humans could strike when no one dared. Using asteroids, gravitational pulls, and clever decoys, humans ambushed the convoy. They destroyed ships silently, leaving almost no trace. The overlords were shocked. Their empire had never been challenged in this way. But humans did more than fight, they inspired. Across conquered planets, enslaved species began to hear whispers of hope. "Humans are small," they said, "but they are brave. Perhaps they can fight back." This quiet hope spread like wildfire, even in places the overlords thought forgotten. The overlords, meanwhile, were growing restless. Their scouts reported small, unexpected attacks. Their patrols were ambushed. Supply lines vanished. For the first time, some overlord officers began to question their invincibility. How could creatures so weak, so fragile, survive repeated attacks? Back in human space, Lyra prepared her fleet for another mission. Intelligence had reported an overlord outpost holding prisoners and resources. Attacking it directly would be suicidal. But humans had learned something vital: strength does not always win, strategy does. Using stealth, feints, and deception, humans bypassed the main defenses, struck hard and fast, and disappeared before the overlords could respond. The prisoners were freed. Supplies were captured. And humans had learned another lesson: fear could be turned into courage. Oppressed species began to assist humans in secret, passing information, providing supplies, and quietly undermining overlord authority. Humanity's hidden strength was not just their technology or cunning, it was their ability to unite others, to inspire hope, and to fight against impossible odds. Even within the overlord empire, whispers of doubt grew. Some generals argued for immediate extermination of the humans. Others hesitated, sensing the danger in ignoring them. "They are unpredictable," one said. "They do not fight like others. They think differently. That is dangerous." The overlord emperor, seated on his throne, narrowed his eyes. He had faced countless rebellions, countless uprisings, but humans were not like any enemy he had faced. Small, fragile, seemingly insignificant, yet capable of striking fear into the hearts of the most powerful. Humans, meanwhile, continued to push their limits. They trained harder, studied overlord tactics, and improved their ships. Every failure became a lesson. Every encounter taught them something new. What the overlords saw as weakness, humans turned into opportunity. And yet, danger loomed. The overlords were preparing a full-scale retaliation. A fleet larger than anything humans had ever seen was moving toward Earth. The humans knew they could not match it in numbers. They could not match it in firepower. But they could match it in intelligence, courage, and unpredictability. One night, Commander Lyra looked at the stars with her crew. "They think we are small," she said quietly. "They think they will crush us. But they do not understand humans. They do not understand courage, hope, or stubbornness. And we will show them." The galaxy had never seen humans like this before. Ordinary in appearance, fragile in body, yet extraordinary in spirit. For the first time, the overlords were beginning to see that these creatures, dismissed as insignificant, were something entirely new. They were dangerous. The humans' hidden strength was no longer a secret, it was becoming a legend. And legends, the overlords would soon learn, could grow into revolutions. The humans had survived, learned, and grown stronger. Against the galaxy's most powerful empire, they had found ways to strike, evade, and inspire hope. But now, the time had come to turn the tide. The overlords, confident in their strength, were about to face the cunning, courage, and unpredictability of humanity. Commander Lyra gathered her fleet for the boldest mission yet. Their target, an overlord command station deep in enemy territory. It was heavily defended, surrounded by fleets and sensors, and nearly impossible to approach. Most species would have fled at the first sight of it. Humans did not. "Remember," Lyra said, her voice steady, "we are small. We are fragile. But we are clever. We are brave. We strike where they do not expect. We survive where others die. Today, we show them the true strength of humanity." The fleet moved like shadows, slipping through asteroid fields and gravity wells. Overlord patrols scanned the area, unaware of the humans hiding in plain sight. Using decoys and misdirection, the humans approached the station silently. Then, with perfect timing, they struck. Explosions lit up the darkness of space as human ships disabled weapons, tore through shields, and struck at weak points the overlords had never noticed. The overlord commanders were stunned. "How can this be happening?" one shouted. "These creatures are tiny, yet they destroy our defenses." Humans moved with precision and courage. Some ships acted as bait, drawing fire while others hit from behind. Every move was calculated, every attack coordinated. The overlords' massive fleets were strong, but they were predictable. Humans were not. They adapted to every change, every threat, and every challenge. The station, once thought impregnable, began to crumble. Humans freed prisoners, captured critical technology, and sent transmissions to oppressed worlds across the galaxy. Each signal carried hope. A small species could fight. A small species could survive. A small species could win. The overlords could no longer ignore the humans. Fear, for the first time in millennia, touched their empire. Generals argued. Officers panicked. The emperor's anger boiled, but beneath it, a creeping doubt began to grow. Could creatures so small, so fragile, really threaten the galaxy's mightiest empire? Back on Earth, humans celebrated their success but did not become overconfident. They knew this was only the beginning. The overlords would retaliate with everything they had. Yet humans had discovered something important. Their courage and intelligence could defeat overwhelming odds. The first major battle in the turning point had set a precedent. Across the galaxy, enslaved species watched and began to believe. If humans could strike at the heart of the overlord empire, perhaps liberation was possible. The legend of humanity was spreading like fire, igniting hope and fear at the same time. Even within the overlord ranks, whispers of worry grew. Officers who had laughed at humans before now argued for extreme caution. "They think differently," one said. "They fight differently. They survive differently. We cannot predict them." The emperor, however, refused to show fear. Yet deep inside, he knew humans were something new, something dangerous, something he could not crush with sheer force alone. Humans, however, were not done. They had tasted success, and they had learned a vital lesson. The universe favored those who adapted and dared to act. With each victory, they became bolder, striking at supply lines, capturing technology, and rescuing oppressed worlds. Their tactics combined strategy, courage, and sacrifice in ways the overlords had never imagined. Commander Lyra looked at the stars one night, her fleet resting in orbit. "They think they are unstoppable," she said softly. "They think power alone will win. But power without courage, without cleverness, without hope, can be broken." Her crew nodded silently. They understood. They were humans, small and fragile, but united, brave, and intelligent. They could change the galaxy. The turning point was not just about battle. It was about sending a message. Humans were not merely survivors. They were challengers. They were heroes. They were the spark of hope that could ignite rebellion across a galaxy long ruled by tyranny. And the overlords, for the first time, realized that the game had changed. The galaxy was no longer entirely theirs. A small species, underestimated and overlooked, was rising. Their arrogance had blinded them. Their power could not anticipate human ingenuity. The galaxy trembled. The overlords, rulers of countless worlds, had ruled for millennia with iron fists. Yet now, their empire was faltering. Humans, small and fragile, had challenged them in ways no one could have imagined. And now, the final confrontation was near. The human fleet, though smaller in number, had learned every lesson from their past encounters. Commander Lyra stood on the bridge of the flagship Aurora, looking at the enemy lines. Millions of overlord soldiers and hundreds of massive warships waited, confident of victory. The humans, by comparison, were a handful of ships. Yet Lyra saw something they did not: hope, courage, and intelligence. "Today," she said quietly, "we fight not just for survival, but for freedom. Every world, every life they have oppressed, every soul they have enslaved, this is for them. Today, humanity strikes." The battle began with a roar. Overlord fleets surged forward, their weapons blazing across space. But humans were ready. Using clever maneuvers, they divided the enemy, striking weak points and disabling communications. Overlord commanders were furious and confused. How can this be? How can such small ships fight with such skill? Human pilots worked together like a single mind. Some acted as decoys, drawing fire, while others struck where the enemy was weakest. They used gravity wells, asteroid fields, and even enemy blind spots to their advantage. Every move was precise, every strike calculated. Humans had no overwhelming power, but they had something stronger: ingenuity and courage. On several worlds under overlord control, enslaved populations watched the signals of human victories and rose up in revolt. Ships were seized, defenses sabotaged, and weapons turned against the overlords. Fear spread through the empire. For the first time, many overlords realized that their power was not infinite. The emperor, seated on his throne world, watched the battle unfold. His rage was immense, but so was his fear. He had conquered galaxies. He had destroyed millions of lives. Yet here were humans, small, fragile, and yet capable of turning his empire upside down. How is this possible?" he growled. The human strategy was simple but deadly. They hit hard where the overlords expected no attack. They moved faster than the enemy could predict. They survived moments when destruction seemed certain. And, perhaps most importantly, they never gave up. Their bravery inspired allies, terrified enemies, and shocked the galaxy. The decisive moment came when Lyra led the flagship into the heart of the Overlord Command fleet. Massive warships surrounded her, but humans had planned for this. Using a combination of speed, precision strikes, and clever feints, the Aurora struck the central command ship. Explosions erupted, shaking the entire fleet. Without leadership, the Overlord forces began to falter. Chaos spread. Humans pressed the advantage. Every victory fueled courage, every success inspired rebellion. Overlord fleets crumbled under the relentless strategy and bravery of humans and their allies. Worlds that had been enslaved for centuries began to see freedom. And as the final Overlord stronghold fell, the empire that had dominated the galaxy for millennia began to collapse from within. Even the Emperor could not escape the truth. His empire was failing, not because of superior firepower, but because humans had something he could not understand: the will to fight for freedom, hope, and unity. He had faced many enemies, but never one that fought with such heart. On Earth, humans watched the signals of victory spread. The small, fragile species had triumphed against the galaxy's mightiest rulers. Humans had proven that courage, intelligence, and determination could overcome even the most powerful adversary. Commander Lyra looked at her fleet, tired but proud. "This is not the end," she said. "It is the beginning. We fight to protect freedom, to protect life, and to inspire hope across the stars. Today, the galaxy remembers humans. The galaxy itself seemed to change. Planets once in darkness now shone with light. People once enslaved now tasted freedom. And humans, once tiny sparks in the void, had become a blazing fire of courage and hope. The fall of the overlords was complete. Their fleets were shattered, their worlds in rebellion, their empire broken. And the small species that had once been overlooked, dismissed, and underestimated had shown the galaxy a truth it would never forget. Strength is not always measured in size or power, but in courage, intelligence, and heart. The cliffhanger lingered in the minds of all who watched. The overlords were gone, but the galaxy was vast. What other challenges lay ahead for humanity? What new adventures awaited them among the stars? The humans had won. The galaxy had changed forever. The overlords were defeated. Their empire, once vast and terrifying, lay in ruins. The galaxy that had trembled under their rule for millennia was free. But for humanity, the victory was not just about destruction or conquest, it was about hope, courage, and the promise of a new future. Commander Lyra stood on the bridge of the flagship Aurora, looking at the stars. Ships from countless worlds, once enslaved, now traveled freely. Humans had fought alongside other species, united not by fear, but by the dream of freedom. Together, they had achieved the impossible. "Look at them," Lyra said softly to her crew. "Planets that were silent are singing again. Worlds that were oppressed are rising. The galaxy remembers us, not as small, weak humans, but as a species that dared to challenge the strongest and won." Across human worlds, celebrations erupted. People danced in the streets, hugged loved ones, and gazed at the night sky with awe. Humanity had survived wars, ambushes, and impossible odds. But more than that, they had inspired. Their courage had shown other species that even the smallest spark could ignite a fire strong enough to topple empires. The overlords' leaders who survived were either captured or fled into the depths of space. Their arrogance, cruelty, and belief in invincibility had been their downfall. The galaxy had learned a lesson: no ruler is unstoppable. No empire lasts forever. And no creature, no matter how small, should ever be underestimated. Humanity did not celebrate out of hatred or vengeance. They celebrated because they had proven something vital: courage, intelligence, and unity can change the universe. Every human, from the pilots in battle to the scientists guiding strategy, had contributed. Every life mattered. Every choice mattered. Commander Lyra addressed a gathering of humans and allies. Her voice carried across the communication networks, strong and calm. "We fought because we must. We survived because we believed. And we won because we never gave up. The galaxy is vast, full of wonders and dangers. But together, we will explore, protect, and inspire. Today, humanity rises, not to rule, but to lead by courage, by heart, and by hope." Across the galaxy, former slaves rebuilt their worlds. Human fleets helped to restore order and defend against those who still sought to exploit or harm others. Humanity's influence spread, not through fear, but through example. They taught that even the smallest species could make a difference, that bravery and intelligence were more powerful than weapons alone. Children on Earth looked at the stars with wonder, dreaming of adventure. Scientists and engineers studied alien technology, seeking to explore worlds humanity had never touched. Soldiers trained not for war alone, but to protect the freedom they had fought so hard to earn. The galaxy was no longer silent, it was alive with possibilities. Even the overlords who had fled would never forget humanity. Stories of the small species that defeated the strongest empire traveled through the void. Planets whispered of humans who fought with cleverness and courage, who inspired hope where there was none, who challenged the impossible and won. The galaxy had changed, and nothing would ever be the same. Commander Lyra looked at the stars once more. "We are humans," she said quietly, "small, fragile, but capable of anything. We have seen the dark, faced the impossible, and risen above it. The galaxy is ours to explore, not to conquer, but to protect. The future is ours to shape, and we will do it together." The humans had risen. The galaxy had witnessed it. And for the first time in its history, the universe felt the courage of a species that refused to bow, refused to surrender, and refused to be forgotten. The final lesson was clear: the greatest strength does not come from size, power, or fear. It comes from heart, intelligence, unity, and the will to fight for what is right. Humanity had proven this to the galaxy, and their story would inspire generations to come. As the stars stretched endlessly before them, humans knew this was only the beginning. The universe was vast, filled with mysteries, dangers, and wonders. And humanity, small but unbreakable, was ready for all of it. The galaxy would never forget the humans who dared to rise.